The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of amber and crimson. 16-year-old Sarah strolled along the edge of the forest, her footsteps soft against the mossy ground, as the evening's tranquility enveloped her. Her village, Elmswood, was a small, quiet place nestled between rolling hills and dense woods. The cottages, with their thatched roofs and flower-filled gardens, stood along winding cobblestone streets. A small river meandered through the village, its gentle flow providing water for both the fields and the lively market square where villagers gathered daily to trade goods and share stories. Each day began with the sound of roosters crowing and the gentle hum of villagers starting their chores. Farmers tilled their fields, merchants set up their stalls in the bustling market square, and children played along the cobblestone streets, their laughter echoing through the air. Life in Elmswood moved at a leisurely pace, its charm rooted in simplicity and a deep connection to nature. For as long as she could remember, Sarah had felt a deep connection to nature, especially the birds. Their songs filled her days with joy, and their graceful flights inspired her dreams. She would often spend hours sitting under the old oak tree, sketching their movements in her worn-out notebook, her heart full of wonder. One late afternoon, during her usual walk, Sarah's attention was drawn to a strange sight deeper in the forest. Intrigued, she pushed through the thick underbrush until she came upon an old, abandoned carriage. Its wheels were crooked, its paint faded and peeling. The vines of the forest had begun to claim it, weaving around its frame like a cage. But what caught Sarah's attention was the sound, a chorus of faint, distressed chirps coming from within. The noise was haunting, filled with a kind of sorrow that tugged at her heart. Cautiously, Sarah approached the carriage. As she peered inside, her heart sank. Dozens of birds were crammed into tiny cages, a mix of vibrant blue jays, gentle doves, bright canaries, and even a striking scarlet macaw. Their feathers ruffled, and their eyes filled with fear. Some had visible injuries, broken wings, matted feathers, and raw wounds. She clasped her hands over her mouth, fighting back tears. The sight was unlike anything she had ever seen, and it filled her with a mix of anger and determination. "Who could do such a thing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The birds chirped weakly, as if answering her question. Determined, Sarah climbed into the carriage and began inspecting the cages. Each one was crudely fashioned, with sharp edges that had injured the birds further. Her mind raced with thoughts of how she could help. It seemed impossible to free them all at once, but she knew she couldn't leave them there. "It's okay," she murmured softly. "I'll get you out of here." The task was daunting. The cages were heavy, and the birds were too numerous to carry all at once. But Sarah was resolute. She decided to make multiple trips, starting with the most injured birds. Carefully, she lifted the first cage and began her journey back to the village, her arms aching but her spirit unyielding. Sarah's backyard soon became a makeshift sanctuary. She worked tirelessly to create a safe space for the birds. Using old wooden crates and fabric scraps, she fashioned temporary shelters. She scavenged for seeds, fruits, and even worms to feed them. For the injured birds, she devised splints for broken wings and applied ointments to their wounds. Every moment of her day was consumed by their care, but she didn't mind. She found solace in their recovery, each small improvement bringing her immense joy. Her efforts did not go unnoticed. The first to take note was Mrs. Harper, an elderly neighbor who often watched from her kitchen window, captivated by the flurry of activity in the backyard. Mrs. Harper, moved by Sarah's unwavering dedication, decided to bring over a basket of seeds and a warm casserole as a token of support. Gradually, others followed suit. Mr. Grayson, the village carpenter, offered to help build sturdier birdhouses, while the school teacher, Miss Evelyn, brought her students to learn about Sarah's work. Some villagers, initially skeptical, found themselves charmed by the sight of the recovering birds. They began to contribute small donations or supplies, drawn by Sarah's unwavering dedication and the heartwarming progress of her sanctuary. Slowly but surely, Sarah's sanctuary became a collective pride of the village. The neighbors, curious about the commotion in her backyard, began to gather. Some were supportive, offering scraps of wood and food. Others were skeptical, shaking their heads and muttering about her wasted efforts. "They're just birds," one villager scoffed. "Why bother?" Sarah ignored the naysayers. To her, these birds were not just anything. They were living beings who deserved care and freedom. She saw in them a reflection. One night, a fierce storm swept through the village. The wind howled and rain lashed against the windows. Sarah rushed outside to check on the birds, but the storm was relentless. When the winds finally subsided, she found that part of the sanctuary had been destroyed. Several cages were overturned and a few birds were missing. Heartbroken, but undeterred, Sarah spent the following days repairing the damage. She scoured the woods for the missing birds, finding some huddled under trees and bushes. She brought them back, vowing never to let anything like this happen again. Her hands were blistered, her clothes torn, but her resolve only grew stronger. As the sanctuary flourished, so did Sarah's understanding of the birds. She learned to identify their calls, their needs, and even their personalities through careful observation and patience. Spending hours each day watching them, she noted the subtle differences in their chirps, the way they moved when they were hungry or scared, and the unique behaviors that made each bird distinct. By immersing herself in their world, she developed an intuitive understanding of their language and emotions. She began documenting her observations in a journal, sketching their likenesses and noting their behaviors. Her passion was contagious. Slowly, the villagers who had once mocked her began to see the value in her work. One day, an unexpected visitor arrived at her doorstep. Mr. Whitaker, an elderly man known for his love of nature, had heard about Sarah's sanctuary. He offered to help, bringing with him books on bird care and a set of tools to build better shelters. "You have a gift, Sarah," he said with a kind smile. "These birds are lucky to have you." With Mr. Whitaker's guidance, Sarah's sanctuary transformed. Together, they built spacious aviaries where the birds could fly and socialize. They planted berry bushes and sunflowers to provide natural food sources. The sanctuary became a haven not only for the rescued birds, but also for wild ones who visited daily. Sarah marveled at how her small backyard had turned into a vibrant ecosystem. Sarah also began organizing community workshops. During these sessions, she educated others about the importance of bird conservation. Children joined her in crafting birdhouses, painting them with bright colors, and installing them around the village. Slowly, the entire community became involved in protecting the local wildlife. Villagers who once ridiculed her began to take pride in her efforts, sharing stories of their own encounters with birds. To keep the sanctuary self-sustaining, Sarah collaborated with local artists to design merchandise like bird-themed postcards, paintings, and handmade crafts. The proceeds funded the sanctuary's expansion and ensured a steady supply of food and medical supplies for the birds. The initiative not only supported her efforts, but also fostered a sense of unity within the community, as more people contributed their skills and resources to the cause. Word of Sarah's sanctuary spread beyond the village. Conservationists and bird enthusiasts came to see her work. They were impressed by her dedication and the thriving sanctuary. Some offered donations, while others volunteered their time. Sarah was humbled by the support, but her focus remained on the birds. They were her priority, and their well-being was her greatest reward. One evening, as Sarah sat in the aviary watching the birds, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. Red, now fully healed, perched on her shoulder, while Pip chirped happily nearby. The once injured birds were now strong and free, their songs filling the air with a melody that seemed to echo Sarah's own joy. "Thank you," she whispered to them, "for trusting me." Years later, the sanctuary became a renowned wildlife refuge, receiving accolades from international conservation organizations. It was awarded the Green Habitat Award for its innovative approach to wildlife rehabilitation and was featured in nature documentaries highlighting Sarah's extraordinary journey. The sanctuary also hosted annual community events where visitors could learn about bird conservation through interactive workshops, guided birdwatching tours, and live demonstrations of rehabilitation techniques. One of the most cherished activities was the ceremonial release of rehabilitated birds, which symbolized hope and renewal. Sarah's efforts inspired similar sanctuaries to be established across the region, amplifying her impact far beyond Elmswood. Sarah, now a conservationist, dedicated her life to protecting and nurturing birds. Her small act of kindness had grown into a movement, inspiring countless others to care for the world around them. Schools brought children to learn about wildlife, and researchers visited to study the birds' behaviors in their natural environment. The sanctuary became a beacon of hope for anyone who believed in the power of compassion. Her journal on. Then subscribe this channel and press the bell icon, and also like this video.